Welcome to Balancing the Scales, the Economic Justice Report. This is your host, Vic Bernsdorf. And on today's show, we'll be talking about Norway Prisons, socialism making inroads in America, and how the coronavirus has been making the case for Medicare-For-All. Before we get to those stories, I'm going to take a viewer comment and do a short political commentary. Viewer comment, Jenny from Lathrop asked me, Vic, why do MAGA folks seem to always be believing Republican talking points and propaganda? Thanks for that question, Jenny. Let me just tell you that it has to do with three things. The elimination of civic education back in the 80s by Reagan, our fear of talking about religion and politics in this country, and also has to do with emotions. Because those three things combine together. Let's go talk about civic education. Reagan got rid of the requirement. I think he went from colleges having civic classes being a requirement to being an elective, I believe. So you don't have to have it as part of your grounding of your college education anymore. So what does that do? And why did he take it out? Well, if you don't know anything about your government, you don't know how you're part of the government, how you are the government, and how the representatives in Washington are actually people who are working for you. And they don't want you to ask the government for anything, like maybe Medicare-For-All, maybe a free college system, maybe long-term care. They don't want you to think in those terms. Okay, that's number one. Number two has to do with religion and politics in this country. No one wants to talk about it. Everyone always gets into an argument talking about religion and politics, right? You've heard that for years. Never talk about that. But those are taboo topics during Thanksgiving, right? Over the Thanksgiving dinner. In Europe, it's totally opposite. You're expected to talk about politics. Maybe not religion, but politics, you're expected to talk about it. And because you're part of the democracies there, right? And you can talk to different parties without anybody getting angry, all right? You're just having an exchange of ideas, and you're learning from each other, okay? It's not like that in this country, right? And also, emotion has a lot to do with it, right? Because if you get riled up with emotions, you're more inclined to react to whoever's talking and do whatever they say. That's in my opinion, anyway, right? That's how Rush Limbaugh has a huge following, because he evokes emotion, right? And then specifically negative emotion against the government. Right? The government, which is actually you and me, folks. But anyway, okay, let me go on to the political commentary. The coronavirus shows Republican ideology is more important than American lives. Yeah, I mean, look, you've heard it, right? Let the older folks sacrifice themselves for the national economy, right? And it makes me think of like a Supertramp album cover. And check it out. It's called Crisis What Crisis by Supertramp, a group back in the 80s and the 90s, I believe. And, you know, they don't really care about, they care about the election, what they care about. They don't really care about killing the virus and restarting the economy. They're worried about losing the election, and their whole banter is targeted towards that, right? In my opinion, okay? Okay, let's go on to today's show topics. Start off with Norway Prisons. As usual, let's go watch a clip on Norway Prisons and we'll come back and talk about it.
How do you think Americans will react when they see this prison?
They're going to think we're crazy here in Norway.
Why?
You guys have another view on prison. You're like really punishing these people. It's like they're animals.
North Dakota has been implementing some of Norway's principles, which boasts one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world, while the United States has one of the highest rates of people cycling in and out of prison. In Norway, prisoners have keys to their own bedrooms, fully furnished living rooms and kitchens with sharp knives to cook with. There's 5-star cooking classes, painting, and they even have a fully equipped recording studio.
Do you feel like this is prison?
Your freedom is taken from you, you cannot go to the store, you cannot see your children when you want. Of course, I'm still in prison.
We want them to have a normal life. We punish them by taking away their freedom, but we don't take away their life.
Well, that was kind of interesting, huh? Different view of prison life for their offenders, right? So, what's going on here? Norway's prison system is designed on 3 core values in mind: normality, humanity, and rehabilitation. Okay, the point of incarceration in Norway is really not to torment them and have them suffer. It's basically they want to make sure that when anyone gets out of a Norway prison, their lives are altered and they make better neighbors and they don't commit future crimes. Norway does as much as they can to prevent anyone who gets out of Norway prison, prevent them from continuing on with their former life and committing future crimes, right? The U.S. prison system is designed for punishment, right? Not really a system meant for personal rehabilitation. Unfortunately, okay, that's the case. Unfortunately, that's the case. Let's take a deeper look at what's going on. Loss of liberty is basically all the punishment Norwegian prisoners suffer. Okay, I don't know a whole lot in detail about the system, but I'll have more videos in the future about it as I look in depth. I don't know. I know if my family members were raped and tortured, I'm not sure if I would want to see them being in a band and eating 3-star meals or whatever. You know, I'm not sure about that. But this is why I have it on, because it just gives you an opportunity to talk about an alternate view, right? There are cells of televisions, computers, showers, sanitation. One Norwegian prison, about a story, there's a farm where the inmates take care of animals, sheep, well, farm animals, I mean, cows, sheep, grow fruits and vegetables. A prison official there was quoted as saying, if we treat people like animals when they are in prison, they are likely to behave that way when they get out. Here we pay attention to you as human beings, end of quote. Okay? The reoffending rate for those released from Norway prison, right, basically is 16%. 16%. That's the recidivism rate, the rate at which people go out of prison, commit additional crimes, and go back into prison. Okay. In the U.S., more than 2/3 of all released inmates are rearrested. See? Here's the interesting part. A comparison of the two systems, American and Norway, shows this. Norway's incarceration rate is 75 per 100,000 people. In the United States, it's 700 per 100,000 people. Okay? Personal story now comes from The Guardian, and I quote, Hesley is 25 years old and is serving 11 years for murder. It was revenge killing, he says. I wish he didn't do it, but now I must pay for my crime. Drugs have blighted his life and driven his criminality. There are 3 gold rules in Bestøy prison. No violence, no alcohol, and no drugs. Here he works in the stables, tending horses, and he has nearly 4 years left to serve. How do you see his future? They asked him, and he says, now I have no desire for drugs. When I get out, I want to live and have a family. Here I'm learning the skills to be able to do that. End of quote. Okay. We know we are prisoners, but here we feel like people. End of quote. So what's the takeaway from all this? What's from this segment of prisoner life in Norway? Okay. In my opinion, folks, justice for society demands that the people we release from prison should be less likely to cause additional crimes in the future. They shouldn't be able to harm other people. Their mentality should have been adjusted such that they don't want to harm other people when they get out. Okay? But they're better equipped to be good citizens, right? Unlike American prisons, Norwegian prisons go a long way of meeting that goal of having inmates, when they go out of prison, have a different attitude, a different mindset, and are less likely to commit future crimes. Okay, well, I hope you learned something new from that segment on Norway prisons. Like I said, I'll have a future show on. We'll go more in depth on what prison life is like for the inmates in Norway and in a lot of Nordic countries. Time to go on to our next economic justice story news topic, which is socialism making inroads in America. And information I give to you today comes from a couple sources: commondreams.org, NBCnews.com, and ashleyabroad.com. So let's continue with the protocol of watching a clip first on socialism making inroads in America, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
I've seen my parents work so hard for things that should have been afforded to them as soon as they got here. Things like Medicare, things like affordable housing, things like access to secondary education.
My sister and I did not have health care for a long time. So I remember growing up just knowing I wouldn't be able to go to the doctor if I needed to.
My dad the other day actually, he was like, why do you support Bernie Sanders? He supports Donald Trump. I asked my dad, when's the last time you've had health care? He said, I have never had health care. And he's almost 60 years old. At the end, I just said, Dad, I support Bernie Sanders because I support you.
The average college grad in debt now owes almost $30,000. 60% of personal bankruptcies are at least partially caused by medical debt. And wages are not increasing as fast as housing costs. Almost 40% of renter households are paying more than a third of their income in rent. According to the DSA, democratic socialists believe that capitalism has given too much power to too few people, and that there should be more democratic control over the economy.
I want to see workers have a say in the jobs that they do, and not simply be treated as cogs in a machine.
Yeah, so the word socialism is becoming more and more acceptable in America, especially among the millennial generation, which is great. Now, this is really interesting. A survey was done recently, and this was a result of that survey. 56% of Democratic voters in Texas and 57% of the same in California held a favorable view of socialism. To the contrary, and for the first time, only 37% of Democratic voters in Texas and 45% of the equivalent in California have a positive view of capitalism. Imagine that. How that was switched around. You can thank Bernie, we all can thank Bernie for that, for making socialism a common household word that's not demonized. Before it used to be demonized, it used to be thought of as a cousin of communism or something like that. You never talked about it. Or if you were talked about it, you only talked about it, or at least Republicans, politicians talked about it in a negative connotation kind of way, right? Okay, so let's take an in-depth look at the relationship with millennials and what socialism is all about. Basically, there are a lot of different definitions of socialism. Socialists amongst themselves can't really agree on everything what socialism defines, right? But here are two examples. This is what I think. There's two examples of what I think socialism is. At least two definitions. There's many others. One, the best example, I think, is worker co-op. A worker cooperative is a form of socialism because cooperatives, the people in the cooperatives are both workers and owners. They work there, but they also are part owner, or equally part owner. And the profits are distributed fairly. Whatever the co-op members agree to, that's number one. So that's a socialist model. And number two is they believe in humane treatment of everyone in society. As we've just seen in Norway Prison. Norway is a social democracy. Okay? They treat their prisoners humanely. They can't stand anyone being treated inhumanely. Like what? Like what kind of conditions? Well, like migrants being trapped in President Trump's squalid jails, homeless people sleeping near or at the bottom of luxury towers, and sick people trying to pay their medical bills with GoFundMe accounts. Okay, those kind of conditions are what socialism tries to prevent, and to a great extent, they have in Nordic countries, which are social democracies. Okay, all those conditions I just talked about: sick people paying with GoFundMe accounts, homeless people sleeping under luxury towers, and migrants in jails. Those are horrific humanitarian disasters. And if you believe that as well, then you may be a socialist as well too. Okay? Just like I am. Okay. Personal story now. This comes from Ashley Abroad. And Ashley herself says, it comes from ashleyabroad.com. That's what Ashley says. I quote, "As a permanent resident of France, I get French healthcare like any other citizen." She's an American living in France, and a portion of my earnings go towards the universal system. Medical fees are very reasonable. Visiting a doctor costs about $30 American or so, and then 70% of that is reimbursed to you through the French Social Security healthcare system. Basically, French healthcare won't bankrupt you in the event of an accident, or since it's not tied to your job, you quit your job, you still have your healthcare, right? It's especially important during a pandemic, don't you think so? Okay, we don't have that here in America, okay? That's why we're screwed to a great extent. So what's the takeaway from this piece? The takeaway is that part of Bernie Sanders' old campaign slogan of "not me, us" meant, to me anyway, that when the government improves the lives of the least among us, all of our lives are improved as well. How? Because it just might be that you or me may end up becoming the least among us at some point in time, okay? It's completely the opposite of the capitalist greed mentality where the few people at the top, the CEO and the shareholders or whatever, managers in the top, they take all the cream off the top, and that cream was a result of all the hard work that people below them did. Everyone. But the workers below them have no voice in a C corporation. Not a B corporation. Remember I talked about B corporations? Not a B corp. I'm talking about a C corporation. They take out the cream off the top, and good luck to everyone else. So you can have what's left over. Okay, let's move on to our next economic justice story in the news.
Ellie Gote manages the beverage service here at Busboys and Poets, a Washington restaurant and bookstore. Last month, she got the flu.
And I was out for like several days because my doctor was like, you're gonna get everybody sick if you go back to work.
That's what officials say about coronavirus, too.
If you feel unwell, stay at home.
Stay home when you're sick.
It's a good idea to stay home when you're sick.
Okay.
But in a lifetime of restaurant work, Gote says Busboys and Poets is the first job where she could stay home and not lose her wages.
When the option is putting food on the table or staying home sick, you know, a lot of people, they're gonna always opt to put food on the table.
Who knows, you know, somebody's relative may be visiting.
Andy Shalal owns Busboys and Poets.
I worked as a waiter. I worked as a cook. I've done all these things. For me, it was a no-brainer.
But the United States is one of the only countries in the world without a national law requiring sick leave for at least part of the workforce.
Isn't that insane, folks? Totally insane. For a first world country? All right, look. First I'm going to give you our sources for this segment today. This information comes to you from HuffingtonPost.com, ForAllStory.com, from CBSMarketWatch.com. I'm going to be paraphrasing from those articles. But look, let's start with the overview. As it turns out, American capitalism, as it stands, with its private for-profit system, doesn't hold up well during a pandemic. Can't handle it, okay? This profit-first mentality has put wealth preservation and politics ahead of American health needs, okay? End result is this greed is good mentality. What has it brought us? It made us leader in total body counts in the world and total wealth destruction of this country, right? The president's doing everything now to keep the stock market afloat, but look at everybody's jobs, okay? Gone, okay? 3% of the world's population has a quarter of its deaths, okay? Let's take a deeper look at what's going on here. Our grocers, postal workers, trash collectors, nurses, emergency medical technicians are really essential personnel. Not meat processors. That's not essential, okay? And not houses of worship, in my opinion. Huh? These are the essential workers. Grocers, postal workers, trash collectors, nurses, emergency medical technicians. Folks, our day of reckoning has come. The American medical system, if you can even call it that, it's not even a system. It's a hodgepodge of providers and insurance companies that don't coordinate together and cost you and I a fortune, okay? I'm paying over $600 a month just for myself and my wife, okay? In other countries, in Germany and Sweden, especially the Nordic countries, you pay about $60 a month. Why? Because you pay more in taxes. You pay a little more in taxes, and you don't have to worry about out-of-pocket costs all the time. They have more money in their pocket than we do on average, okay? A Medicare-For-All system or program without any financial barriers to service is what's needed right now to protect the public, okay? It's where everyone's covered and cost is not a factor to getting treatment, okay? Two personal stories. First one, and this comes to you from CBSMarketWatch.com, and I quote, "My coworkers and I are scared to call out sick because we don't want to lose our chance at a bonus or put our jobs at risk," said Melissa Love, a Walmart employee who works with the labor group United for Respect. She said she's worried about the company's sick leave policy will lead to people coming to work when they're contagious. Next story. Esquire Varner, 33, a security guard in Detroit. She said she felt sick Monday, yet she went to work anyway because her employer doesn't offer paid sick time. "I had the chills," she said. "My body was cold and I had a headache." She said to CBS Money Watch, so she went to her $50 an hour job anyway and may have infected her colleagues as a result. Okay? What's the takeaway from this? This segment, huh? This is a takeaway. The coronavirus has exposed the failure of our private, for-profit healthcare system and makes the best case for replacing it with a Medicare-For-All system or a universal system like they have in Nordic countries, okay? I can't think of a better exposure of how bad our system is. When people lose their jobs, right? You still have your health care in Nordic countries, okay? When you get sick, it doesn't cost you a fortune. The hospitals don't sue you, okay? Okay, so that's the show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Always remember, you deserve the government you vote for. Have a great day.